Welcome to PJTN Online. I'm your host, Laurie Cardoza-Moore. I want to thank you for joining us this evening. Tonight we've got an exciting program because we are coming to you live from the NRB, the National Religious Broadcasters Convention in Nashville, Tennessee. This is our biggest annual media event of the year. We do this every year. As you know, PJTN's mission is to educate Christians about their biblical responsibility to stand with our Jewish brethren and defend the state of Israel against the rise of anti-Semitism. Last year, we saw an 86% increase in anti-Semitic incidents globally. In the United States, we saw a 67% increase in anti-Semitic incidents. We also know that Christian bigotry is on the rise as well. So whenever we see anti-Semitism against the Jews, we're also going to see a parallel in Christianity. And unfortunately, those numbers are growing. We produce our award-winning programs to try to reach Christians and Jews and people of conscience all over the world to stand against this anti-Semitism. And so that is why we are here. Tomorrow, we're going to have a busy day. We've got a press briefing with some excellent speakers who have come from around the world. And tomorrow afternoon, 4 o'clock, we're going to showcase and highlight some of the new programs that we're going to be producing this year, thanks to a generous grant from the Marcus Foundation. And of course, we're going to be talking to some of our media outlets that air our programs to hear from them, the response they hear from their audience. So I want to start by showing you our new booth. This is new this year. We added some new skins. And of course, this is to help us promote our programming. And so we've got, this year we have invited Doug Hershey, who is the author of Israel Rising. We're going to hear from Doug in just a couple of minutes to hear what he has to say, talk about his new project, and a project that we're going to make available to you as a supporter of PJTN. So we have, as we move around the booth, and you notice we have a tower. We are one of the tallest booths in the convention hall here at the National Religious Broadcasters Convention. And you probably noticed the wall. We have the wall, the bricks of the wall that look like they come from Jerusalem. Again, it's to remind us as Christians that our heart is in Jerusalem. That is the city where God said he was going to place his name. So, and here we've got displayed some of our new programs. What's the Buzz is going to be coming up in the Middle East. We will be showcasing that program tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock. And, of course, you know our PJTN Online because you're tuned in right now. And then, of course, we've got Proclaiming Justice Today. So we're excited. But our wall back here shows the programming where we are covering the world. We have this year officially 21 new media partners who are broadcasting our programs all over the globe. And we are just so excited about these partnerships because this is why we are able, this year, 2018, we are now reaching Christians, Jews, and people of conscience in 2.6 billion viewers, 200 nations around the world. And it's your support that makes that possible. So tuning in every week and supporting us, becoming a PJTN Watchman, supporting PJTN on a monthly basis, making a contribution of just $20 a month will help us to push this message about our biblical responsibility out to the globe, to mobilize and educate Christians. So I want to just take a moment to introduce you to Doug Hershey, who is here. And of course, Doug Hershey, do you have a moment? I'd love to just interview you real quick if you've got a second. Excuse us. Do you mind if I just borrow him for just a second? Thank you. So Doug, you are on PJTN Online. This is our Wednesday night live program on the internet, Facebook Live, and I want to talk about your new project. We were just talking about it. So tell us about this book and this project.
Well, I got to get it open first. We just were released yesterday, February 27th. But what happened here is that we have I started with 2,200 old photos that were taken between the 1880s and the 1940s of all over what was then the British Mandate of Palestine, even before that into the Ottoman Empire.
Oh, wow.
And reshot, went back with a pro photographer and reshot some of the exact angles of the land to show how much that the land has revived under Israeli sovereignty. And so
let's look at some of these pictures just to give our audience an example. So how did you obtain these pictures, Doug?
Well, just from being throughout the land, I just had some connections and just, through personal connections of finding a large collection. We started with 2,200 old photos. We culled them down to about 120, which was really difficult to do with all these incredible photos. But there's over 100 photo comparisons from over 25 different locations. But what's also significant about it is that Ezekiel 36 talks about how God spoke to Ezekiel to speak to the land, which is really unique. It's not speaking to people or to kings, but to the actual physical land of Israel, and said that you'll be desolate for a long time until the Jewish people return. And when you return, you'll put forth branches, you'll produce fruit, the land will be cultivated and sown, the waste places will be rebuilt. God will multiply man and beast on it, and he'll treat the land better than it was at the first. And so in the midst of that, I did the research for finding historical eyewitness accounts from Christians and Muslims and Jews from almost every century for the last 2,000 years to describe what the land looked like.
Wow, amazing.
And so one of my favorite quotes in here is from the 10th century, from a Muslim writer in the 10th century, and he's lamenting that, where are all the worshipers in the mosque? Most of the population of Jerusalem is Jewish. And that's 300 years after Arab conquest of the land, or Muslim conquest of the land. And so there's all of these eyewitness accounts of what the land looks like up until 1948, when the nation becomes solidified again, becomes a nation, and just what happens from there. And so even just on the back of the book, I'll show you here, this is one of my favorite shots of Tel Aviv. This is from just right before the nation, 1940 to 46. If you can see here, I mean, these little black dots are camel caravans on the beach.
Oh my God!
And this is the Yarkon River right here, and this is what it looks like today. Just a stunning, dramatic change in such a short amount of time.
It's amazing to me whenever I fly into Israel and we're flying over the Mediterranean to land at Ben Gurion Airport, and I look out the window and I see all of these buildings, high-rises,
yes,
all came together in the last 100 years.
Yeah, it's really stunning.
It's amazing. And I'm also reminded about a sad part of Israel's history in 2005 in Gaza,
right,
when Israel pulled its own people out of the land to try to barter with the Palestinians, to try
right,
to show good faith that yes, we want it. We'll give you a little strip of land. Let's start with Gaza.
Right.
And they gave Gaza up, and what happened? The land died. It shriveled up. I remember a story that a friend told me of a farmer who owned the property. Of course, he was Jewish. He had to leave. He was Jewish. He had to leave the area.
Yeah. And
he left it to one of his workers. And after they left, within days, all the crops started to die.
Wow.
And he called his former boss and said, "What do I do? This is what I'm doing."
Right.
And his boss said to him, "You're doing everything that I would do." But the land, it just goes to show the land responds.
Physically responds to the Jewish presence.
It's unbelievable. It gives me chills.
And the same thing happens very similarly in 1967 through all of Judea and Samaria, what's now referred to sometimes as the West Bank. From 1967 up to the Oslo Accords, when land is then given under Palestinian Authority control, that amount of time, the economy functioning in Judea and Samaria was the fourth strongest, fastest growing economy on earth, up until the time of the Oslo Accords, and then at that point, once Palestinian control took over, the exact same thing. Everything began to slide, and so the land physically responds. The people flourish, the people are blessed, whether they be Jew or Arab, under Israeli sovereignty. The land was intended for a specific group of people simply because God made a promise.
Absolutely. You know, I've always said that the Arabs are missing their blessing. If they would just honor what God honors and bless what God blesses, they will be blessed. They'll be able to prosper. But because they're actually kicking the goads against God.
Yes, exactly. And exactly what you said. I mean, for Arabs that live within Israel, they have the highest life expectancy, the lowest infant mortality rate. They make more money. They're safer. They're more educated than any other Arab population anywhere in the Middle East. And so when it comes down to just simply human rights, quality of life, raising a family the way you want to raise a family, Israel's not the problem. Israel's the answer. And so, and with this book, you're seeing what happens to Israeli sovereignty and how the land responds. And so we're looking at the book not as just simply a then and now, a nice coffee table photo book, but more of a biblical fulfillment. This is photographic evidence that the words of Ezekiel are true. The land is responding exactly the way that God said that it would, and it's happening right now. And we've got the photos to prove it.
Absolutely, and I just want to remind everybody, this year, 2018, is actually the 70th anniversary of the rebirth of the modern state of Israel, the miracle that the prophets foretold would one day occur. And ladies and gentlemen, it's happening in our lifetime. We are so privileged to be alive, to be able to even to show you this pictorial book, to show you the before and after, what Israel looked like 100 years ago, up to 100 years ago. And even before, there's some older, how old are some of the oldest pictures in the collection?
Yeah, let me show you here at the very beginning. Right here, this is the oldest photo of Jerusalem ever taken. This photo is from 1844. So this is 20 plus years before Mark Twain comes through the land and talks about how desolate it is. At a different location, I have the Ottoman census records of Jerusalem in 1844, where it's they're saying that still the majority of the population is Jewish, but it's only 16,000 people. Today, Jerusalem population is over 850,000. Just huge numbers in just such a dramatic short amount of time.
It just goes to show that we are living in miraculous times. And I want to encourage all of you to go to our website at pjtn.org, make a contribution. If you would like to have your own autographed copy from the author, Doug Hershey, please make a contribution of $50, pjtn.org, and we would be happy to send you this beautiful book of Israel in photos. Again, I mean, the images are they're breathtaking, and it's very exciting.
I want to tell you, this is sort of a behind-the-scenes story of this is one of my favorite photos. This area is an area that the Ottomans 150 years ago called the Cursed Land. It was a swamp. It was malaria-infested. Nothing would grow. No one would live there. During Jewish immigration in the late 1800s, Jews are obviously raising money and trying to get resettled. The Ottomans think that they're getting a great deal because they're selling worthless land to a group of Jews. That's what they think, right? And then what happens is that they literally, there's journal entries from Jewish pioneers talking about climbing into these swamps, hand digging irrigation ditches and trenches to drain the swamps, planting eucalyptus trees that soak up lots of water, literally draining the swamps with soup cans.
Wow.
And
maybe we should send some of that to Donald Trump.
Yeah, right.
He's going to drain the swamp in D.C.
Yeah, exactly. So in 150 years, this right here, this is a picture of the cursed land. This used to be swamp. This used to be a desolation and empty. And as you can see now, it's some of the most fertile farmland in all of Israel. The town of Hadera is literally built on what used to be a swamp. It's a thriving Jewish community, and and the fields and the orchards and the vineyards are just they go on for miles. It's
didn't
amazing.
know that. And Hadera, I was in their high school not a couple years ago when I was visiting.
You were
Israel,
visiting the cursed
the
land.
swamp. Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
well,
it's amazing.
It's blossoming.
The entire nation is blossoming.
So, what was your inspiration to do this? You had collected all these photos. What was the impetus behind this project?
Well, I've got a small travel company called Ezra Adventures. I take people throughout the land, for the last several years. And my first visit to the land was about 20 years ago. And I tell you that the Jordan Valley has changed so much in a short amount of time. I remember 20 years ago, getting just a little bit south of Beit Shean and getting down in the desert. If I'm driving from the Galilee down to down towards Jericho, and it used to be empty. And so I'm taking small groups and I'm trying to describe to them what it used to be like. And I'm realizing the more we drive, the more vineyards, the more date trees, the more orchards, the more vineyards, the more communities. And again, just began putting that together with with Ezekiel 36 and going, wow, the Jewish people are here. The land is physically responding. And and I've always had a love for history, and just began putting all these little pieces together. And again, with the amount of travel that I have back and forth to Israel, a lot of people say, I wish I could go, or I can't afford it, or my health, or whatever the case. And so I started thinking, I wonder if I could start collecting sort of this, seeing it then, seeing it now, just to share with friends. And little by little, suddenly it was like, I think we're onto something. And then speaking with some rabbis, some friends of mine, were saying, nothing like this has been done before. Like as far as this extensive, this detailed, again, over 25 locations, with all comparing not only the then and now photos, but tying it into Bible prophecy to say that nothing like this has been done before. The Jewish people are returning, and the land is responding exactly as he said that it would.
That is wonderful. So again, I want to remind you, if you go to our website, pjtn.org, make a $50 donation. We will send you your own autographed copy from the author, Doug Hershey, who is here with us at the NRB. And we really appreciate your viewing, you being here. Doug, I'm going to let you get back to selling books, autographing books.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm going to move around. We're going to talk to some other people who are here. And there's Yochanan Marcelino. I think you know this guy.
I know that guy. He's a good guy. Yeah.
He is. We'll keep him.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for being here, Doug.
Thank you.
So as you heard, Doug has got an incredible project he's worked on for the last several years, and it's such an important piece of work. Not only is it artistic, but it shows the pure evidence of God's covenant, his promise that he made to Israel. And when you look at the pictures, you look at the past and you look at the present, again, 150 years ago, it's amazing to see how Israel has come to life. Truly, as the prophets foretold, it is being fulfilled in our lifetime. And ladies and gentlemen, you've heard me talk about that we are living in the most miraculous time, the most miraculous season in life. The fact that God has preserved our lives to be here today, not 500 years ago, not 1,000 years ago, but now, for this purpose. And he's drawn all of our interest to this incredible land, this incredible people. It's why we do what we do at PJTN, proclaiming justice to the nations. And it's why your partnership is so critically important to our success. So let's look around and see who else we have here. Nisi Davies is here from as far away as Franklin, Tennessee. We are actually PJTN online. We're actually live right now.
Hello. I was looking for you. This girl is a superstar and being a superstar advocate.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, Nisi has an incredible modeling agency, Advantage Models, in Franklin, Tennessee. And also, Nisi is a huge fan of Israel as well. So, Nisi, tell us what you're up to. What are you here doing at the NRB?
Well, I wanted to see friends like you and say hello and shout out to you and to Hayael over there with the Wallers. And a friend that I've worked on movies with has a movie that's screening, so I'm supporting.
Good girl.
Yeah.
That's excellent. Well, it's great to have you. I'm glad you came out. It's great to run into you.
Good to run into you, too.
You take care.
Keep fighting the good fight.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nisi. And, of course, we also have Mike Goldstein. Mike is here visiting with us. This is Mike's first NRB. Mike?
It is indeed my first.
So,
I'm the Ohio State Director for PJTN.
So we put Mike to work in Ohio because Mike is an advocate just like we are at PJTN. And Mike, his Ohio organization has really taken off. Mike, you are in Cleveland. You are working with several different organizations. What is Ohio? What are the PJTN supporters in Ohio working on right now?
We're working on several things. We're doing textbook analysis training. to find anti-Semitism and anti-American material in the K through 12 textbooks. We're doing legislation. We have a pro-Israel, anti-BDS bill in the Ohio General Assembly now. In December, it passed the Ohio House 92-2. It's a bipartisan bill. And we had our first hearing in the Senate committee yesterday in Columbus. So we're moving along on that, and we have some more legislation we want to work on later. And we also want to, we have a plan that we're going to put in place to remove Islamic indoctrination of our students in K through 12 curriculum in all 611 Ohio school districts. So we won't be getting much sleep, but we're going to get some work done.
Amen. Well, let me tell you about a little bit about, absolutely. Thank you for being here, Mike. Let me tell you a little bit about how Mike became the state director for Ohio. When we launched, we found a textbook in Williamson County that had an anti-Semitic quote in it. And one of our PJTN watchmen contacted me and said, "You'll never believe what I found in one of our textbooks here in Williamson County." To understand Williamson County, it is one of the top 10 wealthiest, most conservative evangelical Christian communities in the United States. So to find a textbook, to see a textbook with a quote that was anti-Semitic, anti-Israel, anti-Judeo-Christian, anti-American, but pro-Islamic, did not reflect the values in this community. And so we launched a campaign to expose that anti-Semitic quote. And after several weeks, Fox News picked up the story and ran with it and started talking about what was happening in Williamson County to their audience. We started hearing from Fox News viewers that they made their children bring their textbooks, the history, geography, and social studies textbooks, home, and they started to review them, and they were finding similar content to what we were finding in our textbooks. The parents were outraged. We ended up hearing from parents like Mike in Ohio. We heard from parents in Florida, Massachusetts. We just got back from Newton, Massachusetts. We did an event there, a rally to mobilize the community because our children are being indoctrinated with propaganda. But it was out of Ohio, contacting us, asking us to come help them mobilize their community, help them to review textbooks, show them how to do it, help them to get involved in their local community, because the only way we're going to be able to win this battle and get rid of this anti-Semitic, this propaganda and disinformation, indoctrination in our children's textbooks is if parents, citizens, tax-paying citizens get involved in this process and expose it. Mike chose to. And Mike has been great about pulling together people to assist him. You know, PJTN can't go and fight the battle everywhere, but we can come to your community. We can tell you, we can share the best practices of what we implemented here in Tennessee. And ultimately here in Tennessee, the textbook, not only was the publisher republished the textbook without that quote, but we were able to change our laws here in Tennessee. We were able to make sure that our textbooks were properly vetted for accurate information, because the law stated that all curriculum, all textbooks, instructional materials have to be historically accurate, they have to be unbiased, and they have to reflect the values of each community. So we're equipping communities across the country, just like in Ohio, for parents and citizens to get involved and to be engaged in this battle locally. You know, it's amazing because when we launched the campaign here, we never thought that we would get involved with school board members, but we had parents and citizens who decided to run for school board, to get rid of the school board members who were not paying attention to what they were approving of to teach our children with. So we're seeing that, in fact, in Florida, we've seen a community that is taking off. We're working with 20 counties, parents and citizens in 20 counties, so it works. But again, it all started because of this, because of our programming, because parents or citizens were tuned in watching our program and understood biblically that we have to stand up against this anti-Semitism. We've got to speak about this growing problem that is happening in our communities. We are losing our country. We're losing our children to this propaganda. And so it's very important. But let's see who else we have here visiting with us today. We've got our volunteers, our faithful volunteers, and if you are interested in being involved, next year we are going to be in Anaheim, California. And if you're interested in being part of PJTN and helping to volunteer in any of the cities that we come to, again, please email us at comments@pjtn.org and let us know that you would be interested in volunteering. If you are interested in learning more about how you can review the textbooks in your community, we would be happy, once again, to help you through that process. So, and it looks like Alex is here too, coming all the way from Israel. He stopped by to visit the booth. So let's have a word from Alex, who came the furthest. You get the award today.
Thank you.
Alex Trayman.
Thanks for having me.
The program that we're on today is PJTN Online, so we're live right now on
Amazing.
Facebook.
Nice to
So
see everybody.
say hello from Israel.
Hi.
We were just looking at this incredible pictorial, the book Israel Rising, that Doug Hershey, the author, is doing a book signing here today.
Amazing.
And the pictures are phenomenal. Alex, tell us about how are you from Israel? Were you born there? Where are you from originally?
Well, I was originally born in New York and grew up in central New Jersey, and didn't have too much of a religious upbringing, but eventually, found Jewish roots, and I went to a religious school, Yeshiva University,
Right.
met my wife, we got married, had one child, and I said, we got to go to Israel.
Yeah.
And my wife said, are you sure? Because life's pretty comfortable here in America. And I said, you're right, life is pretty comfortable, but I really think it will be good to raise the family in Israel. And so we moved in 2004. We lived for 8 years in the biblical city of Beit El, the site of Jacob's
Yes.
dream.
Oh my gosh.
And actually we lived in a home that the Israeli government knocked down. One of the stains on the Israeli government in the last several years, and it's happening again actually. But we moved to the only place you can go up from Beit El. We went to Jerusalem. And now I actually live about 200 yards away from the American consulate, which is now soon to become the American embassy.
So it is going to be the American consulate that they're going to convert into the embassy.
Right. So
Very
in the
exciting.
first day, first of all, America has a fantastic consulate in Jerusalem, really right on the seam line between East and West, and it was built in the last 10 years or so. And first stage is to turn that into the working embassy. And there's a property right behind it, which is an old dilapidated hotel. That's going to be the site of the future Trump embassy.
Trump embassy. Listen to that. That sounds so exciting. So tell us, Alex, tell us what you do, why you're here at NRB.
Sure. Well, I'm the director of a new service, also the Jerusalem bureau chief of the Jewish News Syndicate. We're a syndication service that's feeding pro-Israel, conservative, high-quality news to about 45 local Jewish newspapers across the United States, and also several Christian publications and online publications. And what's happening now is that too many of the media outlets covering Israel, whether they are mainstream like AP or the New York Times, or even some of the Jewish media, are leaning progressive.
The fake news media.
Absolutely. And when I say progressive, what I mean is anti-Netanyahu, anti-Trump, anti-Jewish settlements, which means anti-Jewish presence in places named Judea and Samaria. And the truth is that it doesn't meet the majority of the views in Israel, which are more conservative, and also people in America that want news about Israel are looking for it from a more conservative perspective.
Absolutely. So,
And a more sane perspective.
oh my gosh, absolutely. One that makes sense, and from a biblical perspective, because here at the NRB, this is the largest gathering of evangelical Christian media from around the world. They say NRB boasts over 6,000 Christian broadcasters and media professionals. And this is our one event, our major event of the year that we do, proclaiming justice to the nations. But years ago, Alex, when we launched our first NRB event, we look at our booth now, but we had a little booth way over against the wall, one of those tiny little 10 by 10s. And I thought, I remember the scripture in the Bible that says, do not despise small beginnings. And it's been 12 years, and now we're here. We're in the center of this convention center. And when I first started, Israel, the only pro-Israel booth was the Ministry of Tourism.
Right.
There was no organization that was talking about Israel from a biblical perspective, talking about Israel's rights to her ancient homeland. And so we started bringing that narrative through our programming. And I was meeting with more Jewish organizations and media outlets. And I said to them, you have to come to the NRB. It is the National Religious Broadcasters Convention. This is where we communicate the relevancy of the issues. And if Israel is not represented here, it's not going to be relevant to these broadcasters, and they're not going to think it's relevant to their viewers. Now, when you look, you see so many members of the Jewish community who come to the NRB, who understand the role that NRB plays and the significance, the impact that we have on Christians around the globe. In fact, Alex, this is our first year now. We finally hit a huge threshold where our viewing audience has now risen to 2.6 billion viewers globally because of our 21 media partners through this organization.
You know, Rory, truth follows truth, and you're a blaze runner. You know, you laid the path, and now you see that what you've been telling people is coming to pass, and people are realizing now also with the tremendous blessings that the Jewish people in Israel have received over the last several years, the strength, the economic growth, the security growth, the military growth, that Israel is becoming so relevant, and of course it's relevant to members of all faiths, Jewish, Christian, and Muslim. And you know, the fact that you are explaining to people the importance of supporting Israel, it really goes a long way to building up the relevance of the Jewish state, and it makes us feel like we've got friends in the world, because we know we live in a neighborhood where you can often feel isolated. But what's happening now in the last several years is that we're recognizing the strength of our friends, not just the evangelical Christians in America, who are really the best friend that the state of Israel has today, but we're finding friendships in every corner of the world, even in the Middle East, in places you would never expect. So you really see that God is smiling on the Jewish people in the state of Israel, and kudos to you for recognizing that and for continuing to just bless us and to support us with everything that you have. We really are very, very happy to have people like you.
Alex, it's an honor, and I'm blessed to hear you say that, and it's an honor to be able to do this. And of course, we couldn't do what we do, Alex, without our incredible audience of supporters, and social media has become such an important part of our messaging and trying to reach more people and have this conversation. Because, you know, it's interesting, I find that there was, in fact, we had a group of the reservists on duty. I don't know if you're familiar with them. It is a traveling group of Arabs from Israel,
Right.
Christians, Druze, Bedouins, Muslims,
Yes.
who we hosted an event at Florida Atlantic University last night. They came to speak, and there was a couple of kids that came from a more left-leaning organization. They were willing to listen, but they were sharing their story about an incident at University of Georgia where they were trying to have their program, and there were Students for Justice in Palestine who were intermixed into the group, and they started popping up during the middle of their program, interrupting, shouting, "Intifada, Intifada," you know, "Free, free Palestine," the same garbage that we hear. And these kids, these reservists, tried to engage them. Guys and girls tried to engage them in conversation. They just kept shouting. The point is that there are people who don't want the truth. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to be faced with it. It's their narrative or no narrative, and they will shout you down. In fact, these kids went to their program and started asking questions and saying, "Why are you doing this? Why are you telling these lies? We're reservists, we're Arab, we're Bedouin, we're Israelis. This is our country."
Right. Well, you know, the difference there is that the truth follows love, and love is attracted to the truth. Right. So when you hear people standing up and saying "Intifada, Intifada," what does that mean? That means violent resistance. So somebody that's shouting violent resistance they're calling these reservist occupier forces, but they're serving in the army to save lives, right? Which is the greatest virtue that there is in the world, is to save the life of another. They don't want to attack. They're not saying, let's go on the offensive. They're saying, no, we're only doing this because we're defending the lives of our women and our children and defending our rights to God's land that he gave to the Jewish people. And it's amazing that you're finding Arabs and Druze that are also willing to stand up and support the Jewish people in the Israeli Defense Forces, where they're literally risking their lives for the land. And when you see that happening, you recognize, again, that there's something deeper to the Jewish people's return, and that there are other people that see it and other people that support it, because also Arabs and Druze recognize that if there won't be a state of Israel, that what will be the result? What will happen in the rest of the Middle East? What will happen to the Arabs that live there? You know, the Jewish people actually protecting the rights of Arabs, Druze, and Christians to pray and to believe in their faiths in the land of Israel, and nobody else is willing to do that.
It's interesting because one of the panelists, a female, I think she was 22 years old, Druze, and she was talking about women's rights. She said, in my culture, I'm not allowed to do certain things. She said, but my family believes that I should do this, that I should speak out, I should stand and defend Israel. And to me, I mean, that just totally blessed me to see that type of, because it reminds me personally of myself, of my commitment, the commitment I made on a personal level to do the work that I do. But to see these, and these are people, they'll admit they're ostracized from their community because they take the stand. And they feel threatened as well, but they're still not intimidated. They were at, they told us also about UC Berkeley. There was an incident at UC Berkeley where they were being, shouted down, and they tried to talk to some of the students on UC Berkeley, and they got cussed at. I mean, it's just shocking, but it just goes to show there are some people who will not listen to a different narrative. They have made up in their mind what the narrative is. Don't confuse me with the facts.
Right. Well, the key is what you're doing, which is repetition of message. You know, it's marketing 101. If you repeat the message over and over again, it will finally break through. And I mean, they're actually playing by the same playbook when they're saying Intifada, Israel's an occupier. You know, they're just hoping that by repeating that message 1,000 times, that people will start to believe it. But I think when you do see, a Druze woman stand up and say, I'll give you an example. I had a similar situation a few years ago. I produced a documentary called Honor Diaries. It was on the treatment of women it was on the treatment.
You got to watch it. You got to get it on the line. Honor Diaries.
Yeah, it's on Netflix. You can find it there. And it was about the treatment of women in Muslim-majority societies told through the voices of Muslim women. Okay? Now, I was invited to a screening at the University of San Diego. Okay? Now, imagine this. The panel, which I was sitting on, was moderated by the head of the Islamic Studies Department, who was a Turkish Muslim, okay? And then the head of the chapter of the Muslim Student Association was sitting on the panel with me. And they watched the film, and then for the next, 45 minutes to an hour, I had to defend the reason why I was making this film. And I just want to tell you that right after that happened, a girl, a college student from Somalia, that was covered her whole body with the exception of one circle of her face in a black burqa, came up to me and said, I just want you to know that I myself went through a genital mutilation when I was a child, and I could never get up and say the things that you have said in this film. So I want to thank you for making this film and being the voice that I don't have. And that's right after the Muslim Student Association imam and the head of the department are out there, trying to stunt the message of these women. And it was a film told by women, about their experiences. So, yeah, there's a lot of haters out there, especially on the college campuses. This is one of the most rabid places. And people are paying, $20,000, $30,000 a year to get this education on the college campus, right? It's a major fraud, and the fact that you're out there correcting the record, again, and bringing people like this
Absolutely.
It's very powerful.
Absolutely. So, where can our viewers find get access to your newspaper? You're online?
Absolutely. jns.org.
And what kind of stories are you covering there? Is it all general stories, or is it just typically political in nature, or is it biblical stories?
So we cover the gamut. There's a lot of defense coverage right now and all the things that's going on along the northern border in Syria and Iran's efforts to create a Shia crescent from Iran through Iraq, through Syria, into Lebanon. So we're covering the developments that take place there, things that are going on in Gaza with Hamas, and also security in the West Bank as well, Judea and Samaria. We're also covering political developments, but we're also covering culture. And there's so many good things happening in Israel. We cover a lot of the tech developments that are taking place there, which are really just an astounding development of the last decade plus. And really that's the reason why the world is now turning towards Israel, because of the technology. And people that are hating Israel are not realizing that their computer parts were made, their Intel chips were made in Israel, and their cell phones have technology that was made in Israel. And when they're going to the campus and using Waze or Google Maps for that matter, that's all Israeli technology. So we're covering a lot of that and culture. And also when Christians are supporting Israel, when you see great examples of Christian Zionism. So we're really, really happy to report on that and to keep encouraging that.
Absolutely exciting. Well, I have to admit personally, I'm kind of biased to JNS because they're my news resource that I use so I can talk to you every day and I can get the facts on the ground. So Alex, it's great. But one last question before I let you go. The big talk is about Trump moving the embassy. It's going to happen in May. What are the thoughts on the ground in Israel? How do Israelis feel about Donald Trump and about this historic, to us, it's a biblically historic decision?
Right. Well, of course, Israelis are very, very happy, and it's kind of strange that it takes an outsider from politics to come in and to change literally decades of horrific policy. I mean, even obviously Barack Obama was not a true friend to Israel, even though he had some redeeming qualities, and he did help us sign that $38 billion defense pact. So, he has a place in his heart.
We'll give him some credit.
You got to give some credit where credit is due, but in other areas, he made mistakes. But so did his predecessor, George Bush. I think his heart was in the right place, but he did a lot of damage to the state of Israel.
Absolutely.
By bringing elections to the Palestinian people and trying to trick the world into thinking that the Palestinian Authority was a democracy. And by saying all the time what we need is to have two states standing side by side in peace and security. And now you have President Trump saying it's up to the Israelis and the Palestinians to decide how they want to figure out an end to this conflict. And of course, it's a great gift to the state of Israel to announce that you're moving the embassy and to move it. But I want to tell you something. Donald Trump is not moving the capital of Israel to Jerusalem. It's been the capital of Israel for the last 3,000 years. And since the creation of the modern state of Israel, Jerusalem was the capital, whether Donald Trump admitted it or not. Right. So by saying that he's going to move the capital, what he's doing is
the embassy.
He's correcting a historical injustice taking place in the United States. So he's giving a gift to America by moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to the true capital of the Jewish people in the state of Israel, which is Jerusalem.
And we are going to be blessed. I think we've already been blessed. I look at what's happening in our country just since he's become president, and I really believe it's because of his commitment to the state of Israel to be fair and just. With the embassy being moved, when Trump said that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, it was a prophetic almost declaration of a different time and season that we're living in, Alex. I never thought in my lifetime, because since 1995, since that act was passed, every sitting president from that time, from Clinton,
Bush,
has,
Obama.
Yep.
Well, let me tell you something about, there's a waiver that was signed. Once Congress passed the law that the embassy needed to move to Jerusalem, so there was a loophole, which says that the president can sign a waiver, which comes up every 6 months, to delay the moving of the embassy. And now 6 months ago, Donald Trump signed the first waiver that came before his desk. And you know what happened when the same week that he signed the waiver, he tried to pass a health care bill and it didn't go. Okay?
Oh.
You know what happened the very week that he announced that he would move the embassy to Jerusalem? Donald Trump passes massive tax reform. His biggest victory happens the exact same time when he announces the moving of the embassy.
Oh my God.
And I think it's really important to understand this from a biblical perspective. I mean, if you're tapped in and you're not looking at the news as only politics, but you're looking at it as part of a larger plan, he who blesses Israel will be blessed, right?
Yes.
So one of the reasons why Donald Trump was made president of the United States was in order to be good to Israel. But if Donald Trump wants his presidency to be blessed, then he needs to bless the state of Israel. So I think he's off to a pretty good start as far as Israelis are concerned, and we'll see. Maybe Americans will come around to that as well.
Well, I'm excited. I know American evangelical Christians, and I think for the most part, the sentiment here in the United States, although some people don't care too much for Trump, I think that the decision to move the embassy was huge. And I think Americans also saw that as a huge positive thing, because the majority of Americans are Christians. And even whether they're engaged or, partially or their faith is a big part of their life, we all know that Israel is significant. It's an important part of our lives. It should be an important part of American history. We don't call ourselves a Judeo-Christian, despite what Obama said. We don't call ourselves a Judeo-Christian nation for nothing. I mean, even from our very founding, Haim Solomon, who was a wealthy Jewish banker, bankrolled the American Revolution for George Washington. He died without a dime to his name. He sacrificed his wealth for this country. And we owe a debt. And there's an interesting verse in the New Testament, in the book of Romans, that says that if you have benefited from the Jews spiritually, which Christians have, that you owe it to them materially, financially. We should be blessing Israel. We should be blessing what God calls the apple of his eye. We should honor what God honors.
Well, there's no doubt that America has been the greatest ally to the modern state of Israel since its founding. But now what you're starting to see is that Israel is growing up and paying that favor right back. And today there's no question that Israel is the greatest ally that the United States has. And all of the defense aid that the United States gives to Israel comes back tenfold right back to the United States in terms of intelligence, in terms of military sharing, and also most of that money that the United States gives gets spent in the United States. I mean, we're the ones using American-made F-35s, and we're testing them operationally because we're always testing them operationally, So that provides valuable service back to the Americans, and we're sharing how do those planes work, what needs to be improved. Of course, we soup them up a little bit once we get them, but we give a lot
Make
back.
a good thing better.
Yeah, of course.
Well, Alex, it's been great to have you. I'm glad you're here. We're looking forward to having you on our panel tomorrow morning. And then we've got our big program tomorrow afternoon. We're so glad you're here. Thank you for taking the time to be here.
Thank you, and wishing everybody also a happy Purim, which begins.
That's right, tonight.
And tomorrow your panel is on Purim, which is the story of a Persian that wanted to kill the Jewish people, annihilate all the Jewish people, and yet somehow or another, through fate, coincidence, or more importantly, the hand of God, whose name is not mentioned in the story of Esther, by the way, on purpose to teach us that it always seems like his hand is not the one, but we know better that the king is looking out for the nation of Israel and will protect us against any enemies, including those new Persian enemies that seek the annihilation of Israel. So,
amen.
Everybody.
Yes, thank you for being here. We'll see you tomorrow morning. God bless. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that about concludes our program for today. I hope you enjoyed our PJTN online program. Again, go to our website at pjtn.org. Sign up to get on our mailing list, and remember jns.org. They're a great news agency. I know you're going to be pleased. They've got a lot of good coverage on a lot of the issues going on. If you want to stay informed, of course, you go to pjtn.org, and you'll find jns.org articles there, but also visit their website. and mark it. Make it part of your everyday viewing, just as I do, to find out the news in the Middle East. So I want to thank you again, and I just want to remind you that we are looking for more PJTN Watchmen to join PJTN monthly with a $20 a month donation. We need more PJTN Watchmen as partners in this ongoing effort. All of this is possible because of the financial support of our friends like you. I can't do it without you. So I want to invite you to join me in this battle. I want to thank you again for tuning in to PJTN Online, and I am your host, Laurie Cardoza Moore, signing off from NRB in Nashville, Tennessee. Good evening.